The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. And by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com. The Dice Tower, episode 554.
Teaching History.
Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Travis Chance from Kolossal Games joins us to talk about balancing a busy production schedule. We chat about some recent plays, and we present a tasty tale of board gaming horror. Plus, we continue our new educational series with our top 10 games that teach history. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Frankenberry to my Count Chocula, Tom Vassell.
Okay, I get the reference here, Eric. I don't get the what it has to do with history.
You know what? I actually went looking for like famous historians, and I couldn't find one that, there were all these articles that said, did you know Harry Houdini was an amateur historian? Like, that's not going to work. The Harry Houdini of board gaming, then you'd be like, what does Harry Houdini have to do with anything? And then I guess I could have told this story, so it would have worked fine.
Yeah, but you've already used Harry Houdini.
Okay, then. So, Count Chocula.
We really have to make a document.
We really should. I keep track of the puns.
Go back and put 400.
I know. I keep track of the puns that are at the end of every episode, but I have not kept track of the introduction references.
Well, folks, I'm Tom Vassell.
Hi there, I'm Eric Summerer.
And welcome to the busiest month of the year, or the busiest 2 months of the year, and that is May and June. I know they're the busiest month of the year for two reasons. One, kids graduate during this time of year, school gets out, and the teachers think it's incredibly important to put on a boring program. Not that it's boring, your kids are fantastic, but you have to sit through an hour of other people's kids.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed that? Like, you go and there's multiple grades.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, and now the first grade will sing. And you're like, yay! Oh, can we leave now? And they're like, no, your kid is also going to sing one song at the end. And we did this on purpose because we knew you'd sneak out the back for second through fifth grade.
We actually had at a concert that my son was in, they specifically forbade us from leaving. They said, you have to stay for the whole thing. You cannot leave after your child has performed. We're not going to let them out of the back room to go.
That's where I would have like an emergency, like, grandma's in the hospital. You have to let him go, you cretin. Also, Adventures Infinity Wars starting very close to that time.
I'm seeing it. Well, I guess by the time this airs, I will have seen it with the kids. But as of this recording, I have not yet. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to like it. Although I'm still missing two of the films in the sequence. I'm going to watch Thor Ragnarok this weekend. And I guess I'm just going to have to accept that Black Panther is not going to be part of my knowledge when I see the film.
Well, okay, the fact is you have to watch Thor Ragnarok, I think. Not to mention it's my second favorite movie of the whole Marvel universe.
Well, all right then.
And Black Panther.
Well, that one's available.
Top 6 or 7 too.
Black Panther, I'd have to go to a different movie theater to see. So
yeah, well, Black Panther, I can tell you this: there's a land called Wakanda.
Oh,
if you know that, you will get through the new movie. Okay,
I'm sure I'll see it eventually, but I just never got out to the theater to see it.
So, yeah, they also release movies. That's another thing that makes these months busy. But also, it's convention season. Now, Eric's convention season starts in June. He probably has to read 200 books between then and now.
Not 200, but looking at the calendar, as a 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 this month scheduled, and probably a few more before Origins comes up.
Are you keeping track of like the number of books you do and you celebrate at different milestones?
Yeah, I crossed 200 not too long ago, and I sort of did a little happy dance. But yeah, I keep, especially for different publishers, I know I'm on like number 85 for this particular client. So when I hit 100 for them, I'll celebrate.
I guess the good news is if someone ever says, how many books have you read in your lifetime? You have a good starting point.
Sure. I don't get to read for myself very often these days. I'm almost always reading for work. So, yeah, that number is pretty accurate at this point.
The problem with Eric, with you reading these, is you probably know them better than most people. So, like, if someone's like, oh, you're a real fan of this book, and you're like, well, let's do some trivia and see who wins.
Yeah, certainly. I just need to get one of those big franchises that people really care about, and I'll be all set.
Well, this week, I will be at CMON so if you're in Atlanta, I'll be there basically for a day. I'm arriving Thursday. I'll be there for Friday, but I got to fly back because I have a child graduating high school.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Didn't I talk
That's
about
dedication.
her on the podcast when she was like in kindergarten? I feel like I did.
Oh, boy.
I think I did. Dice Tower is like 13 years old now, right, or something?
It's, 2005 to 2018, so yeah.
So her entire school life has been Dice Tower. She knows nothing else. Anyway, so there's that. Then the week after that, I'm going to be at Geek Way to the West, and I'll be with Kolossal Games there at their booth for a while, and I'll also walk around and stuff. And then I will be at a homeschool convention, Florida Homeschool Convention in Orlando, Florida. And then I'll be at UK Games Expo. Yeah. And then I'll have 1 week where I will be able to breathe briefly, and then we go to Origins. Origins schedule is up. We have a show at Origins. I think the Gen Con events have been released by this point, too. And we have an event there. So there's just stuff happening all over the place. Keep an eye out for us at these different conventions.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a busy summer for sure.
Don't forget also that the Dice Tower is more than just an audio podcast if you listen to us. By the way, I will want a big shout out to Mandy and Suzanne, who went above and beyond, switching out with us over the last couple weeks.
That was fun. We should now. I need to do an episode with Mandy, and you need to do one with Suzanne, and we just have to figure out how that's going to work.
Maybe we'll like to start blending around like this. It would be kind of interesting. Yeah. So there's that, and Eric and I do video too, though, and Eric and I do Dice Tower Tonight with Crystal every other week. So if you hear this, it's in a week and 1 day, and so we do game shows that Eric is currently not doing so hot in.
I am terrible at these games that you're presenting us with. I feel terrible. My mind was a total blank at this last week's episode.
When we do these game shows in real life, you kind of do a little bit of a mocking tone towards people when they do poorly.
It's true. This is my payback for all of the snark that I have given other players. Your mind really does go blank when you're the contestant. It's like when you're watching at home on any game show. You're screaming at the television, I know the answer. I could win the $1 million right now. But when you're actually in the moment, it's a lot harder to come up with the answers.
Well, after May and June, we go to the month of July. And in July is the greatest convention on the planet for board games, and that is Dice Tower Con. There are still tickets left, folks. Folks, listen. We're doing a live board game breakfast there. We're doing a live top 5 show. Me, Eric, Suzanne, Mandy, Sam, and Z are going to tell you our top 5 overrated games.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Eric. But here's the good news, Eric. You have allies now to fight against the evil Sam.
It is true, yes. I seem to recall that the last time you guys did a top 10 overrated games, it was also at Dice Tower Con, because I think I was running camera for that.
That was the first one we did, yes. It was the first live top 10 that we'd ever done. And it was, I still remember a couple people who just could not stop laughing. In fact, I think you laughed a couple times because I believe the camera shook a bit.
Yes, it did, yes.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun, folks. So we are doing that. We're going to be doing a big Camel Up tournament there. And
that's Camel Cup, right?
Yeah, you're right. Camel Cup. I can't believe I'm saying it wrong now.
I'm having trouble learning to say it.
It's probably way. Actually, they're probably still going to call it Camel Up. It's too late. That bridge has been passed. So lots of things coming up, but Dice Tower Con, check it out. Really, if you've ever wanted to meet somebody from the Dice Tower Network, the chance of running into a Dice Tower Con is really high. I'll be there. Eric will be there. Mandy will be there. Suzanne will be there. Sam and Z, Derek, Jason, half the people from Board Game Breakfast, some of our contributors on the show. Jeff Engelstein's going to be there. Robert Geislinger. I mean, I'm going to be forgetting some people, but there's just an uber amount of people going to be there from the Dice Tower, and you have a chance to say hi to all of them. There's designers going to be there, Eric Lang, Rob Daviau, Richard Launius, and more. And we do the Jack Vassell charity auction, which is super fun every year.
Yeah, at some point I think there will be more Dice Tower people there than non-Dice Tower people there.
That's not quite true, but it is true that like if you want to talk to us, your chance is really high there. Although we're not at our booth because our booth is the convention.
It's one big booth.
All right, so all that's happening, but we have spent, I'm looking here, 10 minutes almost. We got to get to some gaming talk.
We should play something, yes.
Okay, so I want to start with a book series that Eric has not read, I don't think. You haven't read the Mistborn series, have you?
I have not, no.
Oh, the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson has become my favorite fantasy series of all time. I love them. I love them, love them. And so there's a game about Mistborn, and it's from Kevin Wilson. And basically, real quick jive of Mistborn, there's an evil Lord Ruler who rules over all the land. He's an evil dude. He's super powerful, and everyone fears him. There's a rebellion fomenting where they're going to try to cause him problems. And the hero of the book, this lady named Vin, she's a Mistborn. There's like magic in this world, but the magic is by ingesting metals. Like you might take a little vial of iron, and then you can use that iron to do something. So each metal, there's a certain number. There's I think in the first book, there's 12 metals, and each metal does something. Some of them let you basically fly or jump really high. Essentially, you can push against the metal, and it will throw yourself backwards, or you can shoot the metal at somebody else. Some just make you like a brute strength person. Well, the Mistborn character has all the powers. Most people just have one power, but the Mistborn has all of them. Well, in this game, you don't get to be the Mistborn. You are the leader of a house that's underneath the Lord Ruler. The ruler has a bunch of houses with great lords and ladies, and they all go to balls and stuff while all the peasants starve, and this rebellion foments. You are trying in this game to please the Lord Ruler. And you do so by these different problems come up, which are the characters from the rebellion, or just people starving, or, you need to look better, whatever these problems are. These problems require a certain number of resources. So on your turn, your house will produce you some resources. Then you can try to solve a problem on the board. You don't have enough resources to do it, probably. So you ask other people to help you, but you have to give them some of the victory points for solving the problem. And then there's a lot of card play involved that can make the problem harder, easier, whatever. And you go back and forth trying to solve problems. The problems will be constantly moving. And when they get to a certain point, the problem will erupt and cause you problems. There is a track at the bottom of the board. The Vin card comes out at some point, this unrest track at the bottom board. And she will end the game when she comes out for good or for bad. So if she ends the game and you take her out and the unrest is 7 or less, then whoever has the most points, the most honor with the Lord Ruler wins. But if she makes the rebellion succeed, the rest gets to 8 or more, then whoever has the least amount of points wins. Because if the rebellion succeeds, you don't really want to be in favor with the Lord Ruler.
Right.
Since he's been deposed.
Right.
So the game is kind of a very... it's not complicated at all, right? It's very simple. But it's like a big take that game. But it also reminds me of an older game I like a lot called I'm the Boss. Because you're making these deals. Like, I need these resources. Oh, Joe, you have them. What? Susan has them too? Susan, now I'll give you some victory points. Or someone says, oh, you need this metal, do you? Huh? I need 4 of those points. And I'll be like, what? It's only 9 points. You're only offering 1 piece. They're like, yeah, but do you want it to succeed or not? So I like it. It's very interesting. I think it's more fun for me because I really know the series well.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. That's Mistborn.
First up for me is a new one from AEG. It's called Space Base. I got to play this at Tabletop Day at the Portal, where, Tom, you and I have hung out along with Sam and Z. We were there for a big event not too long ago. Really nice venue. They did an all-day event. I took the kids for just pretty much the afternoon. But we got to play a bunch of stuff, including this new title from AEG. Space Base is a dice rolling resource management game along the lines of Machi Koro and Valeria Card Kingdoms, where the active player rolls dice, and then they can either add those dice together to get, say, a 10 if you had rolled 2 5s, or you can activate the number 5 value twice. And all of the other players around the table also get to make that same decision anytime the active player rolls. And they can make a different decision. I could activate 10, and you could activate 5 and 5. Everybody starts with a basic set of cards. And all of these cards will give you money, or they may increase your income so that when you spend money, it doesn't go all the way to 0. It might go to 1 or 2 or more as your income increases. And also victory points. And ultimately, this is a race to 40. When somebody crosses 40 victory points, that will trigger the end game. Now, the cool thing about these cards is that they have sort of 2 values on them. One is what happens when it's your turn and you roll the dice and you activate them. That's sort of the blue value on these cards. But when you spend money to get new cards, to replace your starter cards, the starter card turns upside down and now it has a red value on it that will trigger on other people's turns. So at the beginning of the game, you've got the full array of values, 1 through 12, that can all do stuff on your turn. But you need to upgrade those cards in order to have them activate on other people's turns as well. So now the cards are sort of spread out kind of like Splendor, where you've got very inexpensive cards, a row of those, and then some middling cards, and then some more expensive but very powerful cards. So do you spend several turns saving up money and then spending on those higher value cards, but then you're not replacing quite as many and you don't get to activate as often on other people's turns? Or do you buy a bunch of cheap cards and then have something happen on almost every roll of the dice if you've replaced lots of cards? Plus, there's other neater abilities that only trigger on, say, an 11 or 12. And yeah, those might not cost as much as the one that triggers on the 7, but then you're not going to have that activate as often. There are some victory point cards you can get. There's some special abilities you can charge. It all flows really well, and what makes it different from, say, Machi Koro or Valeria is this dual value on the cards, that they have different abilities, whether they trigger on your turn or on another turn. And maybe you don't want to replace a card that has a really cool ability, but then maybe you do, because then you get something that happens on both your turn and your opponent's turn. It's pretty neat with the extra bonus that my 6-year-old sat down and played this. He didn't win, but he did make all the decisions he needed to make. He knew what to do when he rolled the dice. He was watching on other people's turns, and he was making purchasing decisions based on how well they work for him. So it's not that difficult to learn this game. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Now the question is, do I like it better than, say, Valeria or Machi Koro? Thematically, yeah, I think it wins out a little bit. I still like the crazy loose economy from Valeria, where you just keep getting all sorts of stuff. And this is maybe closer to that than Machi Koro. There's a lot of money. Money's a little lean in Machi Koro, and it takes a while to gear up enough to start buying things. This one sort of gets you going a little faster. I enjoyed it, and I think the number of cards, I think we were far from seeing all of them. There's lots of stuff to explore in there, and the illustrations of the ships are kind of cool too. So I really enjoyed Space Base, and so did the 6-year-old.
Well, any game that gets a 6-year-old to play it is a good thing, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, well, I mentioned this very quickly in our Dice Tower Tonight show, but I want to talk real briefly about The Rise of Queensdale. This is a legacy game from Marcus and Inca Brand. It is, I'm guessing it's going to take about 20 playthroughs, maybe. And I'm really enjoying it so far. We haven't finished it, obviously, or even got halfway. But there is a ton of pieces in the box, and basically the game is you each have a fiefdom, so it's up to 4 players. You each have this fiefdom, and you're slowly building it up and adding buildings to it, but also running your guy around on it and discovering things on this. And you're doing all this with a dice placement system. You roll your dice. They have different symbols on the side due to stickers that you put on them. And you place these dice in different areas, but you can always like spend a resource to re-roll your dice if you need to. And you're collecting resources to build buildings. You are taking different actions. Sometimes an action lets you pull someone out of the bag. There's lots of decks of cards and all sorts of things happen. Like there's one set of cards that when you get it, Eric, it's you read the top half out loud to everybody, and then the bottom half you read to yourself and don't share.
Huh.
Yeah, so there's a lot of – the theme is medieval times. I don't think there's any like fantasy stuff in it at all. I think it's fairly straightforward. I mean, there's a fortune teller in it, but, I don't know if that's real or not. So, but I'm enjoying the dice placement a lot. You're going to be able to upgrade the stickers on the sides of the dice. You each have a certain victory point total to get to. If you get to that victory point total, you win that game. But then next game, you have to get to a higher victory point total. So someone could still win by getting to that lower one before you get to the higher one.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff that's discoverable in this. I'm not spoiling anything here at all because, why would you? I think it's coming out around Gen Con.
Okay.
But I'm enjoying it a lot so far. This is like with this kind of game, when I stopped and I said, all right, Z, but mostly because it was him, I said, would you like this if it wasn't Legacy? And they said yes. Everybody at the table said yes.
Okay.
So that's a good sign, right?
Yeah. Each player has their own dice that you're upgrading?
Yeah, well, here's the cool thing is that, and this is, we keep comparing it to Seafall. We shouldn't, but we do. And the one thing we like about the game is you get to keep stuff from game to game. So the buildings that you build in your fiefdom, you will keep from one game to the next. And so you keep all the stuff that you find and different things when you upgrade your dice. So each die shows some resources on it. I think there's 4 different resources at the beginning of the game, and there's 2 action sides to each die. If you roll a resource, you can put it on a resource spot, get that resource. If you roll an action, you can put that there and get an action. But you can get, for example, this isn't a spoiler because you can see it at the beginning of the game, you could get a side that gives you a double resource. There's even some sides of dice. It says add this side to a die and then look at the rule sticker to see what it does.
Oh.
Right. Would you buy that side?
So you have to put it on the side first.
Yes, you do.
Then you know what it does.
Yes.
That's dangerous.
It's interesting, right? And you think it would stop a sane person, but those are being the first ones grabbed. Because people just want to know what they do.
Yeah, it's got to be good, right?
And so when you lose, you get seals. And you get like 1 seal if you lose a game.
Like,
you get
like porpoises
an extra
and seals?
seal like if you almost won. I'm talking about a royal seal, as in the red thing on a letter.
Yeah. Okay.
The wax.
Yeah.
And those seals are what you use to buy new sides to your dice. So people who aren't doing well will have better dice as the game goes by.
Ah. All right.
It's interesting. That's pretty much all I can say without spoilers. I'll be doing a full video review of it at some point.
Yeah.
But that is a really entertaining game, and it's called Rise of Queensdale, coming from Ravensburger at Gen Con.
Nice. This is another dice rolling game, but a little less complicated, called Pass the Pandas. This is from Playroom Entertainment, another one that we played with the kids, both kids in this case. In Pass the Pandas, you are basically trying to get rid of your dice. You dole out the dice based on the number of players. I think with 5 players, you only have 4 dice to start. On your turn, you simply do 1 roll. Fa-dunk. And several of the die faces are blank. Some have pandas on them. There's also bamboo, and there's water droplets. The water droplets evaporate. You immediately get to discard those dice back into the box. Huzzah. Any pandas, the game is called Pass the Pandas, you give those to another player. And if you roll the bamboo, then you get to do what's called the bamboo challenge. So if I rolled 1 bamboo stalk, the next player then has to beat what I had rolled in bamboo. If they roll 1 bamboo, then nobody exchanges any dice. But if they roll less bamboo, I get to give them the difference in dice. And if they roll more bamboo, they get to give me dice. And in this manner, dice get passed around the table, and the first player to totally get rid of all of their dice wins the game. It's that easy. This is one of those super fast games where you're just yelling and screaming, please, let me roll some pandas. I thought it was going to be really dumb, and it is kind of dumb, but it was fun dumb. It was fast, it was silly, it was raucous, and the kids had a good time with it. So, there's not a lot of depth here, but Pass the Pandas is a fun, it's a good time. I liked it.
I think that's a new thing. We're going to have to just trademark that, the fun dumb.
The fun dumb. It's a fun dumb.
It's a fun dumb game. All right, the last game I want to talk about is a fairly heavy game that looked super boring, and that's called Incorporated. Now, Incorporated takes place, I think, slightly in the future. The world is divided up against the world's split into basically the United States and freedom and the Chinese conglomerate, which isn't freedom, or maybe not. Maybe the United States is bad. I don't know. Because in this game, you're just a big banking corporation. You don't really care about the governments. Uh-huh. You just want the governments to be in line for you so that you can make money. And so you're going to be buying shares of resources in different companies over the course of this game. There's not a lot of them. Each of these companies has a special power, but you are investing in different companies around the world. You can start like auctions and auction off a share, and then people will buy that share. You can sell your shares if you think they're not going well, but you're also taking them over by force. Like you can move cubes around the board and take over it. It's a very strong. It's like an economic Twilight struggle. It's really what it feels like. And it's just so fascinating, all the different things. Each round there will be different cards coming out making certain resources better. Like maybe tech is really powerful this turn, and it's going to get a lot of money. Well, then I want to be invested in tech. And you have tech in India, Eric. So I'm going to make India go over to the American side that will kick you out.
Huh.
And it's really interesting. It's about, I'd probably say 90 to 2 hour game. And maybe a little bit longer than that, depending on how much you get into it. There's a lot of maneuvering and outthinking and trashing the other players. It's very much in your face. But I thought it was a really solid game. So don't be fooled by the boring cover. Incorporated is really fun.
Okay. So several years ago, Freedom and Freeze released a game called Felix, the Cat in the Sack. And apparently didn't realize that Felix the Cat was a beloved classic animated character here in the U.S. at least. So when
Felix the cat,
that's the one.
Wonderful, wonderful cat.
He is wonderful. So when he republished the game, along with the help of Stronghold Games here in the U.S., they changed the name to Felicity, the Cat in the Sack. And this also came out with the kids at Tabletop Day. Felicity, the Cat in the Sack is an auction game. Each player has a hand of cards with varying values of cats. You've got a couple of really nice-looking cats that are worth like 15 points each. And there's, I think, a 10, and then there's an 8 and a 7 and a 3. Some small values. There's also some mangy cats that are -3, -8. Not good cats. There's also a couple of dogs. And there's a bunny, for some reason, that's worth 0. So every round, each player is going to select one of these cards, dog, cat, whatever, and put it in a designated position. So there's a start player, and then so their card goes in the number 1 slot, then 2, 3, 4. Then the start player turns over the first card and begins the bidding. But you're bidding on the entire lot. You're bidding on all, if there are 4 players, all 4 cards. The entire sack full of cats. But you only know what the first one is. As soon as someone passes, they're going to collect some money, a small little pittance from the center of the board, but then you reveal the next card. So now everybody else that's still in the bidding gets to see more information, but by then the price will have probably gone up. This continues until everybody but one has passed, and the one who wins the cats gets to see what they all are and pays their money to the bank, while everybody else has sort of gotten some money, usually. Then you start it up again. Whoever won is the new start player, and you do this, I think it's like 8 or 9 times. I think it's 9 auctions. And then you total up points. Now, these dogs, will chase cats away. If there's only one dog. If there's two dogs, they fight, and so nothing happens. But if there's only one dog, the big dog is going to chase away the highest positive value cat, so that's not good. But the small dog will chase away the most negative cat, which is good if you happen to get one of those.
I still think all cats are negative, but all right.
Well, you know, in the course of the game, this isn't taking your opinion into account. And you total it all up at the end. And whoever has the most money, both in cats and in money that you have acquired through the game, because every coin that you've held on to is worth a point as well, wins the game. The kids, again, did very well with this. In fact, my 6-year-old beat everyone. Not just the kids, but I think 2 other adults were playing, including me. Yeah, he just cleaned up. Got a couple of really lucky auctions, and other people got some really nasty ones. But this is an interesting mechanically auction game because you have that shifting knowledge. One player at the beginning, or each player knows what they threw into the sack. And so different people know different things about what the board state is. And seeing, you know, there's opportunity for bluffing here. You know, that guy just bid. I know he's got the last card in the set this time. So he knows that there's at least something good in here, unless he's bluffing and trying to get me to bid up things. There are some neat choices here. And the art is cute. I think it's a nice little package, certainly very portable, and a nice change on the auction genre. Felicity, the cat in the sack.
I've always thought this was a good game. It's good to see it back. I'm not sold on the name Felicity. It doesn't have that same ring. I wish it was like a 2-syllable.
Yeah, I mean, Felix
word.
the Cat in the Sack was a really good name, but I think it was confusing. I don't know.
No. I get that they changed it from Felix. I'm trying to think of a female name that starts with an F that's 2 syllables.
Frida?
Freya. Frida the cat. I don't know, maybe. Anyhow, so you mentioned you played this stuff at the Tabletop Day. I also played games on Tabletop Day, but I swore a great oath to 2 guys in my game group that I would bring only games I knew how to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I did.
Oh.
So I brought them in. I played 3 games over the course of the day, and I was there for 12 hours.
Wow.
But I just basically just kept teaching game after game after game. I really get a kick out of that, and so it was fun just to show off all these games, and somebody like, are these games any good? I'm like, today, they're all good. I can't say that normally. Most days I'm like, I hope they're good, but maybe not. But I don't know. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of people come out for the event. Was there a lot of people where you were at?
Yeah, it was quite crowded. Rob Daviu happened to drop by and was playing some stuff. And although he showed up and looked around the room and said there's nowhere to sit at first, and came back in a little bit later after checking out the trains across the street. But yeah, that is kind of a sucker thing. I'll go across the street, look at the trains. Did you take your kids to see them? We did. We actually got a tour near the end, and my kids' eyes were just huge seeing all this stuff. And of course, my youngest wanted to buy like half the store. It was cool.
All right, well, from games to Tabletop Day, what's next? Let's find out.
And now it's time to chat with a gaming luminary to get a new perspective on the state of the hobby.
All right, folks, well, let's take a break here from all this craziness about games, and let's talk about games. Well, you know, with us today is Travis Chance from Kolossal Games. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, so Travis originally Travis has worked for 3 gaming companies, I believe.
Every year I like to change it up, you know.
Well, no, you better be careful, and people will think your current company is a one-time company.
I started a little company called Action Phase Games, which most people probably know us from Aeon's End or Kodama. Those were the 2 kind of big ones we did. We did a game called Heroes Wanted first.
Well, that's when you were just Action Phase.
That's just Action Phase.
And a few other games.
Yeah, and then we sold the company to Travis Worthington at Indie Boards and Cards, and I worked there for a year as the director of marketing and product development. And then I kind of missed being my own boss, and I decided that I wanted to try and do a new company again. So I started a new company called Kolossal Games. We launched our first Kickstarter in January. It was a game called Western Legends. It did really well, did almost $600,000 with a first-time designer, nonetheless, and a sandbox-type game, but an actual sandbox game, not like a... And there's even sand in it because it's Western, so there's just lots of sand.
Well, we've actually played this game. If you want to go, last Friday we played it live on our YouTube channel, so you can go watch it. I'm sure it was fun. This is this time traveling stuff.
Yes,
that we're doing.
Time traveling. Yeah, so Kolossal Games, I've got a really fantastic team of people. I'm working with Kira, who was part of Action Phase. She was she did the social media for us, but she's the CEO. I work with Chris Ham. He's a game designer. He designed a little card game called Strife, and he designed Legendary Creatures. I work with Arnaud from Matago, Arnaud Charpentier, and Tanguy Serra is our CFO. So we've got a pretty big team for a new company. I think we might have the most employees of any company for a company that you can't physically buy any of their products yet. So,
well, let's jump back to Action Phase real quick. I'm curious, what causes someone to sell their company? This happens before. Like I just read in the news, Rather Dashing sold to Kolossal Games. Mm-hmm. This happens a lot. So I can ask you from the sellee point. Or the seller point, I'm sorry, what would you...
The story is pretty funny. We were at Gamma, Indie Boards and Cards. At the time, we used PSI, and so did Indie Boards and Cards. So we were next to Travis Worthington, and Travis just kind of saw Nick and I, my old partner Nick, who still works at Indie Boards and Cards, and he just saw us hustling and being smiley and happy, and we were, anyone that wanted to talk to us, we were happy to talk to them. And at one point, he just kind of looked over and he was just like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, "How do I do what?" And he's just like, "Be this excited constantly." And it's like, because we were new, And then he just there was a beat in the conversation, and he goes, "What do you think about selling your company and coming working for me?"
This doesn't happen that much, folks.
And Nick and I, we kind of looked at each other confused, and we were like, yeah, okay, maybe. And we'd already had actually another company, a larger company, that was interested in us at one point, that we had been flown out and talked to people, etc., and it just didn't really work out. So we kind of had a reputation for being hustlers. We were new, and we also had kind of an ability to find good little games, which are kind of hard. And Travis Worthington's quite known for that. So with Resistance and Coup and whatnot. So at that time, Kodama had just come out, and there was a lot of buzz about it. And so he he approached us when there was a lot of unknowns. So we were getting ready to launch Aeon's End. Aeon's End we launched, and it made close to $300,000, and it went on to do even better with the subsequent Kickstarters. So he I guess he saw the potential in us, and the reason why we sold ultimately was he made us an offer we couldn't refuse, Marlon Brando style, and we just decided it was time for a change. Nick and I had kind of been lashed to one another, like we've been, survived a battleship sinking, and we've been at sea for a long time, working our butts off, trying to make a name for ourselves, and it was an opportunity to make a little bit more money. It was an opportunity to kind of go to the next echelon in the industry, because as I'm sure you know, being self-employed it's tough. There's times where it's stressful and it's tough, and it was an opportunity to kind of level up, I guess is a good way to put it.
Well, let's say someone has a small company, and they would be approached by someone. Is there any advice you would give? Things you wish you did differently?
No. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think Travis's the deal that we got was a good deal, and I think that it was obviously the entire team. I was the only person that's left. The entire team that was the Action Phase team that still works with Travis. So clearly, it ended up being an equitable deal. I simply just wanted to do something different. There's no bad reason or anything like that. I think one of the hardest things is people try to value their company, and if you actually do a professional valuation of your company, not what do you feel like it's worth, what is it actually worth, what's your actual earning potential. We had a couple games that didn't do so great. So, like, obviously we can't say, hey, well, look at this. We got 3,000 units of Scoundrel Society collecting dust in a warehouse. You have to pay us for those. So we had to make some realistic concessions. But I think ultimately, it's really hard to be a small publisher. I think it's very hard to be a small publisher. So if you have the opportunity, and it sounds like something that's interesting to you, I think you should entertain it. I mean, it's a conversation worth having. Obviously, it's different for every person. I feel like I didn't answer your question.
No, I was asking for advice. Like, what would you tell someone else? Should they like double check? Should they?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
So you want to see the other person's
I'm not asking for anything bad. I'm saying,
yeah. You want to see the other person's financials, right? You want to know. You don't want to get bought out and then 5 weeks later you're working a line chef at Hardee's or something. You want to know that they've got the money to keep you afloat. You should do your research. Make sure you know who you're working for, who you would be working for. Make sure that your philosophies align in a way that is conducive for a positive outcome. Obviously, if you hate, let's say you hate Take That Games and you go decide to sell your company for TakeThat.com, it's probably not going to be a great fit for you. I don't know. I think it's a lot of really kind of common sense things, but I suppose in a way you could get overly excited and wrapped up. I mean, there's no greater compliment, right? That you built something and someone wants to buy it and it kind of take you on. That's a massive compliment. So don't get starry-eyed. Like, actually try to make sure you know what you're doing, weigh the pros and cons, and make sure you know who you're working for.
So now that you have a larger staff with your new company, what's your capacity? How many titles are you juggling at any given moment right now?
So right now we essentially have a Kickstarter up every 6 weeks, which is insane. And that's not counting that we've got some sub-brands and we're doing some collaborations with people like, I don't know if you are aware, the Eclipse second edition, New Dawn for the Galaxy. We're collaborating on the re-release of that. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire. I think the only way to be profitable, really profitable, if you want to get past the boutique level of business is to get to scale, is you really have to be ambitious. And to be ambitious, I think you need people. You need to have a workflow that makes sense, kind of like an assembly line. Like, imagine Santa Claus's assembly line, where it's like one elf is handing, the box to the next elf, who's wrapping the box, who's putting it into the Santa sleigh type situation. I know that's a weird analogy, but that's
that is weird. Most people use Model Ts or something like that. But
yeah, Santa Claus is a little cooler than that. So that's we're doing a dozen plus games. I genuinely think we could do more. It's all a matter of you finding games that are in such a state that you can kind of turn them out quickly. Games that are ready versus games that need a lot of love and work and testing and things like that, tons of art and pre-production. You got to kind of balance it.
Well, you started here kind of with a company that most people, as I can tell, start with a game.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, here's our game. Some of them even name the company after their game.
Yeah,
and then they go on from there. But you started with a company. And you didn't even have a game at first, and then you brought in games. Now, Western Legends was your launching point, right? But you have other games already planned from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I've got games to 2020. I've got most of 2019 figured out. We bought the Small Box Games catalog, so right now we have the Omen Kickstarter. Shameless plug up. Which John had. That was something like 74 games. I know some of those things were expansions and stuff, but
sure.
What?
74 games.
74 games were the line items in that deal. Yeah,
well, true. But I mean, how many of them are? I mean, any company has a pile of games. Not all of them are going to be worth grabbing.
Sure. But if 10 of those are worth grabbing, then hey, and you never know. You never know, right? I mean, when you're trying to build an equitable company, let's just say whatever. Someone wanted to buy us, it's still an asset that we own, right? Like, we own those assets. Whether or not we're using them, they are assets. So, Yeah, so Kolossal is different in that way. My first company, Action Phase, absolutely. We had a product that kind of took off, and a company kind of grew around that. I look at Kolossal more like a tech startup than I do the sort of traditional golly shucks type publishing model that most of the people that we're friends with have.
Do you feel like Kolossal will have do you feel like it has an identity? Like, do you have like a type of game you're looking for, or a type of, you know what I mean? Different companies have different types of games they do. Some are all over the place.
I've never really been a fan of kind of pigeonholing. I feel like it's. I think I just want to make great games. You know, I mean, Aeon's End and Kodama were very different games, and they were both successful. And I think that you can have numerous products under one banner, and those products can be diverse. I mean, there's lots of different types of gamers. There's lots of different types of games. It feels natural to say we should do different things. Now, I will say that because we use crowdfunding, because we use Kickstarter, we really have to take into consideration those metrics. You know, the highest backed games are games that are $30 or less, or $80 or more. So that kind of median bandwidth, which is oddly the games that are in retail typically are that, you know, $40 to $60 type games. We're not really. Those are kind of tough. Those are tougher to tackle using crowdfunding.
Why is that?
I feel like Kickstarter, the perception of Kickstarter is, $20 to a gamer is like buying a pack of gum at the grocery store, right? Like they're willing to take a chance on $20, maybe $30. Like that there's been a little bit of price creep, so that the $30 feels like it was $20 a few years ago. I do think a lot of people really want this kind of Cadillac, you know, European vacation type experience when they're backing a game. And so if they spend $100 and it's got all this stuff and there's all this hype and they want to be a part of it, right? Like they want to be part of whatever that little gaming cultural phenomena is. And so I think it lends itself more toward those games. I mean, you think 8 years ago, $100. I remember when Eclipse first came out, and it was $100, and I was like, the nerve of these people.
People lost their minds over that.
Oh yeah, and now it's just $100 is nothing. I mean, like $100 is almost expected at this point for some of these larger games. So I think that, you know, we kind of look at the high-low there. We have a lot of small games, like I said, you know, Omen. We did Imperius with Grant Rodiak. And our first game was Western Legends, which was a larger game, a $70-ish game. We did one game called Kamisama, and it was this median price game. It was like a $50 game. And it certainly shows that that's true if you look at the numbers there.
So you're about to switch with this company in a sense, because right now you said you're kickstarting once every 6 weeks. You don't have any games yet. The games are coming.
Yeah.
Then the logistics comes on board.
Yep.
How do you prepare for that? Because that's something that I'm finding a lot of Kickstarter companies are not prepared for.
Well, this is the Kickstarter we have up right now is my 19th Kickstarter. I've had 2 Kickstarters deliver late. One of the latest of which was 6 weeks. And that was, I don't know if you remember, during the Hanjin or whatever, the freight company that went out of just like one day, everyone woke up and the largest freight carrier in Hong Kong was bankrupt. And literally all of the stuff on their ships was just being held as part of that bankruptcy. And so people were scrambling to get their stuff off of that ship and to avoid any complications with that. So incidentally, while that was happening, a large tsunami happened in the Pacific. So the boat that had our stuff had to take like a 3-day avoidance route to not get slammed with that. Then we got hit with U.S. Customs. They charged me a couple $1,000s for the privilege to X-ray all of our stuff because the person at the factory put the paperwork on the bottom of the box instead of the top. So, so I've had 2 products that have been late. I've had 2 products that have been early, and I've had 1 product that's been 2 months early, which is unheard of on Kickstarter. Unheard of. So how do you prepare for this? It's part of the process from the very beginning. You should be thinking about logistics. It's not just enough to say, I have a game, I put it up, it has great artwork, people think it's cool. Like, it's a process. You need to have, there's third-party vendors that you work with. You have to communicate with the factory, hey, once all the games are made, put them on a pallet. This company or either the factory will arrange for it to be taken to port, loaded onto a boat. If you're manufacturing in China, it's going to come to the United States, usually through Long Beach in California. Then you have to put it on a train or a semi-truck to somewhere else, and then, hey, the fulfillment process begins. And it can get much more complicated than that. So how you do that is you work with a party who's more like that's what they do, that's their job, so that you can rely on them to handle this for you. But even then, you need to know all your shipping weights, your case counts. There's lots of tedium that goes into the logistics aspect. And as we've seen, prices are just increasing for shipping. They don't seem to ever go down. They just continue to go up.
Having worked with a few projects that you've dealt with a few delays, how much lead time do you work into your estimates when you tell people this game will ship at such and such a date, this is what we're aiming for? How much of a buffer have you built into that estimate?
So I'm kind of a madman in that I want to be able to upload all of my files to the factory within a 2-week period of the closing of the Kickstarter. And we've actually, in Kolossal, we've updated that to we upload the morning after the Kickstarter closes, because all of our Kickstarters end on a Sunday, so we want to upload on a Monday. So that's the policy. What that means is that we need to have all the artwork, all the files, everything completely ready, rule book completely done. So that needs to be factored in very early on. Typically speaking, the manufacturing process doesn't take a long time. The freight process is what takes a long time, and then the actual kind of getting in the manufacturing queue, because these factories work with numerous parties on numerous products. They're making whatever, like George Foreman grill boxes or something, and they're making playing cards for someone else, and they're making dice sets. They're making dice sets for Hasbro or something, who knows. So you want to make sure that you have your ducks in a row so you can get in the line, because just getting in the line can be one of the longest parts of the process. So my advice would be that make sure that when you launch your game that you know that you can upload, and from immediately after the campaign. And then if you know that you can do that, it should reliably be a 3 to 4 month process if all things go according to plan. It's kind of really unforgiving or it's unnecessary for it to be much longer than that. So when I see campaigns that say, hey, this is going to take a year for us to deliver, that means they probably are still doing work on the game. Like the game wasn't done when they launched it.
Do you feel like Kickstarter, you're using Kickstarter for all your projects or just the ones under 30 over 70?
Every game I've ever done has been on Kickstarter, unless I've designed a game for, like I did the Buffy game for Upper Deck, or some games for other people on the side. But personally, every game that I have been a publisher on, I have used Kickstarter.
And would you recommend that for any new publisher?
Well, no, because I don't want any more competition. But I think,
I'm basically saying, is Kickstarter the future or the present? I guess we should stop saying the future. Is Kickstarter the way to sell games these days?
So it's very hard to make money as a publisher. Your margins when you go into the distribution channel are very, very chopped up. And it's to the point now that the distribution channels have an extra layer in the supply chain. So you have people that are essentially holders, they're brokers that deal with the distributors, right? So you send your stuff to them, they take a cut, the distributor takes a cut, and then you end up making almost barely more. You make barely any money over the manufacturing cost. So with Kickstarter, you can eliminate a lot of that because you're doing a direct-to-consumer model. Now, of course, there's fees. There's, you've done Kickstarter for the channel. So there's fees and things like that. Obviously, shipping, you're incurring shipping, whereas if you just use the traditional publishing model, you make something, you send it to the distributor.
Right, but you mentioned these Kickstarter fees, besides the shipping. Mm-hmm. Why not, once you're established, just go to a pre-order system? Because then you don't have to pay Kickstarter or anything.
There's a certain kind of mania with Kickstarter. There's this thing of people wanting to be a part of it. There's this kind of diehard Hans Gruber countdown to when the Kickstarter ends, and that if you're not a part of it, if you don't somehow get inside that window that you're going to not be a part of this really cool thing, you're really missing out. I mean, I just went and bought all the Rising Sun extras, myself, and I would have gotten them for a lot cheaper if I just would have backed the game when it was up. So I think enthusiasm's contagious. I think people want to be a part of something that's succeeding. It's cool. There still is the spirit of Kickstarter, which is people helping other people to kind of execute these plans, these products, these dreams, etc. You could very ostensibly look at it and say, oh, well, hey, this is really just a pre-order system. But if the
well, it is. I mean, I think people say it's not. That's crazy. I mean,
it is. But there is a level of interaction, right? Like, there's even things like on Kickstarter, and I've had this happen. So, for example, when I worked at Indie Boards and Cards, we had the game Delve, and people hated the dungeon tiles in that game. Just could not stand them. And we thought
they did?
Yeah. They as in you. And
I never said that publicly.
No, I know, just directly. But it was a great opportunity to see that public response and then to rise to the occasion and make the change so that the product could actually be what it needed to be.
Okay, so you mentioned that. I was thinking about that earlier when you said you send the files the morning after. But what if during the campaign you're like, we need to retool some stuff?
Well, then you're going to have people working long hours. You're going to have people staying up, working on Saturday, making sure the job gets done. It might mean that you have to push back a timeline on the next product in order to make sure this one comes in. I mean, on maybe you have to hire a third party to come in and help with some graphic design or something. In that particular case, Daniel Solis had to go in and change all these things. He was the graphic designer for that game, and he went in and he got it done. I mean, it was a lot of work, and we had to make concessions from other parts of other projects in order to execute that. So, at the time it stunk. It felt like stunk. It's like, oh my gosh, we really screwed the pooch on this, but the backers really responded well to the fact that we listened, that they felt like they had a voice, that they felt like that they had a positive impact on the product, and it made them feel more invested in the game, which I don't think you get that with a pre-order, right? A pre-order is still just kind of like you're window shopping. You're looking through the window and the clothes are on the mannequin already, and you're like, well, I don't like those. And it's like, well, it's too bad. We have 60 boxes of them in the back, and we can't do anything,
What's your best advice for maintaining enthusiasm, maintaining hype throughout the course of a campaign?
Have a 2-day campaign.
I think enthusiasm, I mean, first of all, it's candor, right? Like you need to have a rapport with the backers. And let's be honest, the Kickstarter backers, some of them can be trying. As time goes on, the culture gets a little more and more entitled. Nonetheless, I kind of use this approach when I'm dealing with people. I try to be transparent. So if people say, well, this is stupid, this stretch goal, blah, 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 I'll kind of pull back the curtain and say, here's how the sausage is made. Okay, so you think that this is a bad stretch goal? Well, I had to pay for art, right? That cost me this. Then my graphic designer had to stop what he was doing. He had to do this. Right. Then this actually, these 2 cards, you say it's only 2 cards. Well, guess what? Did you count how many cards there were? Because now I have a new sheet. So now I'm going to have to figure out how to work in this extra sheet, etc. I mean, and it's not the consumer's responsibility to know how all these things are done. Nonetheless, they make assumptions. So I think if you can be honest, I think that goes a long way, and especially in combating the more negative people. People will sort of step up to the plate for you and kind of say, hey, these guys are being honest. They're interacting. I think having a high level of interaction. I personally go on our Kickstarters and I personally answer questions. Some companies have someone who does that, or an intern, or someone's cousin or something that does it. I want to be able to directly interact with the consumers, because I would want someone to directly interact with me. I would want to feel like I'm actually talking to a real person that cares. That's another big part, is just simply caring. Like, if you really care, if this isn't some shill project that you're putting up to make money, because there's a lot of better ways in the world to make money than making board games,
So I've heard.
Yeah. So if you're being genuine and you can show your excitement and your enthusiasm, I think that counts for something. I think this mentality of what Kickstarter is for some people, or should be, or was, or whatever. There's a component of wanting to be a part of something, wanting to be a part of that magic or the community or that moment, that the project's up. So I think if you can actually capture that in the way that you interact with people, I think it goes a really long way.
So you got into strategy board gaming when?
Like 2008.
Noob. But okay, but a question we get asked all the time. Someone will email me and they'll say, "Hi, my name's so and so. I want to be involved in the board game industry.
Yeah,
what should I do?" So, what would you tell someone like that? Because you did it.
I was on a panel recently with Matt Forback and some other publishers, people, and the first piece of it, the very first question is, "How do I become a publisher?" And Matt Forback's reply was, "You shouldn't." And I was like, "Yeah, I agree. I think it's extremely hard. Like, you have a very marginal chance of success, especially now. I mean, when I did Heroes Wanted back 4 years ago, making $130,000 was like,
an amazing feat.
Oh yeah, it was like finding a bag of money in the woods.
And now if you don't do that, you're upset.
Oh yeah, I mean, if it's like, oh, my project only made $1 million instead of $3 million, ho hum, kick a Coke can across the parking lot. So I think you need to know what you're getting into. People have this fantasy of working in the industry. The reality is this is a very low-paying industry. A lot of that, we were talking about this today at lunch. This is an industry populated by people with no concept of the value of money. The consumers are willing to live on the street in their Gloomhaven box, and the publishers are willing to eat into their own margins to make a product that they think is cool. And I think that's awesome that people are that enthusiastic about it. But ultimately what you're saying is you're having a lot of people that are making business decisions that probably shouldn't be making business decisions.
So your answer to this is don't get involved in a business.
I mean, if you want to work, so say you want to kind of get an inroad into gaming, I think the best thing you can do is volunteer to work in a booth, go to shows, go to conventions, talk to people. And I mean, it's honestly, I can't count the amount. I mean, think of people like Pete Shirey. Like, we know so many people that their start was quite simply, I love gaming, can I give you a hand? And that turned into an opportunity at some point. And it's a great way to start a relationship with someone, because you're volunteering your time, you're showing that, hey, I want to help, I want to add value, and I'm willing to do that out of my own pocket and my own time.
I'm actually doing this. I'm going to help out Travis's booth at Geekway to the West.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get a job out of this.
Yeah,
that's my hope.
Maybe. We're going to bodyguard. We want to hire you to be a bodyguard.
A bodyguard?
Yeah. I run my mouth a lot, so I'm probably going to need that. The reckoning is coming.
Nice.
All right, so we're getting to the end here, and we got to get back to our normal show, but I had one last question for you, and that is, why did you run like a chicken from our Kemet game that we have never finished?
So, that did not happen. You claimed to be tired, or you had a headache, or you had, instantaneous influenza or something. You're like, oh, I think it's time to go to bed. And I distinctly remember when we quit at that point that I controlled 3 temples.
I'm pretty sure you were about to lose.
And I was on five of the 8 necessary victory points. And
Steve Avery was in the game, and he had to go. So we had to allow this. And it's very fortunate for you, is really where I believe.
I am more than willing to sit down and play Kemet with you.
My audience, I played Kemet this past Saturday.
Yeah. Did you lose again?
To my daughter. I trained her.
We got to get Rodney Smith. If we'll let Rodney Smith be the adjudicator of this situation, because Rodney, one, he's Canadian, so he cannot lie. And
is that a thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's Rodney Smith. He won't. He's going to tell the truth. He's going to tell it how it is. And the reality is that you were afraid. You saw my massive army coming.
No, I well, anyhow. Alrighty, well, this is exciting. You can find both Travis and me at Geekway to the West. We'll be there
And we'll be at all different things. And you're going to be at different
Origins, Dice Tower Con,
and
Gen Con.
Go watch Omen and Western Legends on our channel. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
And now, another tale of board gaming horror.
Oh my, that's horrific.
Gather round, children. Early in 2018, I played Azul with some friends and was delighted, but not out-of-print prices delighted. They called the tiles starbursts, so I gleefully decided to make a do-it-yourself starburst version. 5 sets of 20 different colors. That sounds easy enough. At the store, I see there are a good variety of flavors, but each bag only contains 4 colors. Aha! Tropical fruit flavors includes purple. Almost $20 worth of candy bags later, and I've got my set. Some spreadsheet cells with borders, reused game parts for factories and point counters, a rebound puck for the first player token, a large candy bag for drawing, then we're playing Starzool. That weekend I took it to our library game day. My friends were amused with the production. I put the extra unused candies in a bowl on the snack table and got some thank yous. A few weeks later, at another large group game day, here we will have a nice buffet of breakfast food at one end of the fellowship hall. At the other end were the gatherers' games, including my plastic Starzool box with my game components and my draw bag and enclosed tiles. As the event wound down, we started clearing and putting away the tables. Wait, where did these Starburst wrappers come from?
That sounded a little joyful there, Eric.
I think he was asking for this.
Yeah, I know. That's like if you're like using M&Ms for pieces. Like, all right, no one eat any of these.
Exactly.
What you say?
Especially since he used a candy bag as the holder for the tiles. Like, what? Somebody's just going to look at that and see that it's a candy bag. And anyway,
I guess. But here's the thing: that this has always boggled my mind. Whose parents taught them it's okay just to grab random food and eat it? I always ask. I mean, if I'm at someone else's house and they're like, "You can eat anything," I'm like, "Is this included?" You should just ask. I am amazed at work where someone's like, "Oh, I didn't know that was your soda that I drank." Well, was it yours?
Yeah.
You know, if it's not yours, don't touch it.
Well, there was a buffet table.
Sorry, I'm getting all worked up. Go ahead.
Well, there was a buffet table, which, you know, if you put something on a buffet table, everything there is up for grabs. I guess the weird thing is that they crossed to the other side of the room where the games were and saw candy. And I guess if you just see a bag of candy, say the box was open. Eat it.
It's not yours.
I guess that's true.
Okay, but here's the thing. I don't feel bad at all because of a couple reasons. One, Starburst is a really cheap candy.
It's true.
It's a really easy thing to fix.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Secondly, he was kind of pirating a game with the candy. Which, okay, I get it. It was out of print and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll buy an actual copy because it's in print now for sure.
Yes.
For those of you overseas who may not know what Starburst candies are, they're kind of like a fruity taffy candy.
Yes. A very hard taffy.
But it's not taffy that sticks to your teeth very long. You can chew them and swallow them right away. I don't eat them very much. Do you?
Well, not anymore, no. My son's not allowed to have them either because he has dental work, and so he's sort of bummed he can't have a lot of his favorite candies anymore.
Yeah, I liked them a lot when I was a kid, but I'm really struggling to remember the last time I had a Starburst.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to sit here and nostalgically think of candy, or I can go back in time, history style. Let's do it.
Yes.
It's a Dice Tower Top 10!
The Dice Tower's Top 10 list is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc.,
Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.
Okay, so today we're talking about games to use to teach history. I think history is important. Those who do not study history are bound to repeat it. I really believe that. I believe knowing history is important. Many times kids in school will think history is boring, which fascinates me that anyone can think that. But I think it's just an important subject to learn. And you don't got to know everything about history, but it's fascinating, right? It's interesting to learn about why we got to where we are today.
It's true, yeah. So, and it's good to, a lot of these games can provide a context for learning history, making it, come to life a little bit more than just a list of dates.
Now, if you're looking for games that teach history, probably 99.9% of them are war games.
True.
That's just the nature of the beast, right? There's war games that simulate historical battles, and you can learn a lot from these war games. Like, for example, the Command and Color series that Richard Borg does. He'll write detailed things about what happened, and so I'll read those. That's fascinating to me, to go back and read that stuff. But I don't have a ton of war games on my list because I'm trying to make this more accessible. In fact, I believe I only have one on my list, technical war game.
Yeah, I've got, I guess, a couple on here.
No, you just have one.
The good thing about war games, if you're looking for detail, a lot of these war games can provide that because they will dial down into very specific aspects of particular battles or particular theaters, and so you can really get a sense of the specificity of that period, that very specific period. I was trying to aim for maybe a little bit of a wider swath of history, a wider period, more years, more geography, with a few exceptions. But still, I was trying to go a little wider than a specific battle.
Yeah, but it's not just that. It's that history is not just war. There's more involved.
It's very true.
All right, well, we'll see. Let's get started.
Number 10.
I was all set to talk about my number 10, but Tom whispered to me, and he suggested that maybe I should wait a couple turns, so I'm going to do that, because I can trust him, right?
Of course. My number 10 is innovation. Now, this one's 10 on my list because it's more of a conceptual history than anything else.
Yeah.
It is a game that you are playing and you are inventing inventions and going through technology throughout time. So there's that. And it shows these 10 different eras. But it's basically a card game where you're putting different cards in front of you and you can use these different technologies, maybe paper or the wheel or whatever, to get yourself points, to attack other players a little bit. Not really a war game, but to kind of steal cards from them. I really love the game. But the history connection here is somewhat tenuous, I will agree, except that it does teach you a lot of different technologies through history. That's innovation.
Yeah, I mean, this one didn't quite come to mind for me, but it's a good choice and can provide some concepts or technologies that might be worth exploring if a student were to be looking at it.
Number 9.
My number 9, I was all set to talk about this one, but my token didn't come up, so I think Tom gets to go before I do.
My number 9 is a Civilization-style game, and probably the simplest one of the several Civilization-style games on my list, and that's Seven Wonders. Now, again, this one's near the bottom because a lot of this is conceptualized. Seven Wonders is a drafting game where you're going to draft cards into your hand, and you will then use these cards to put them out in front of you to go through time and history and get technologies and wonders of the world and things like that. I especially like the wonders of the world part because a lot of people don't know about all these different wonders that are in the game, and it shows you them. Seven Wonders Duel is also pretty good in this regard. But again, remember, this is more of it's a great game, don't get me wrong, of drafting and building this in front of you. But at the end of the day, you might see the numbers a little more than you see the theme. But I still think it's enough to get people talking. Seven Wonders.
Sure, I agree.
Number 8.
My number 8 is Imperial. It's a game by Mac Gertz. Several of Mac Gertz's games have a historical context and include historical notes in the rules, which is very helpful. Imperial really sets the stage for wartime investment. It's an investment game where you're buying troops and ships and stuff, moving them around the map, but then control of the various powers changes based on investment. So it sort of brings to life that concept of war profiteering, which of course can create some good discussion in this particular theater. It's a tricky game, one I really enjoy, but it can also provide a good backdrop for historical discussion. Imperial, my number 8.
Sure. Also, you might want to play a good game. I will agree. Imperial can teach you that if you don't control anything, you can just sit and watch everyone else play.
But still make points.
My number 8 is higher on Eric's list. Man. Well, we'll get there eventually.
Number 7.
Number 7 is Patch History, a game that involves lots of historical figures that you can acquire and put into your sort of mosaic civilization. I just love how you can have this, sort of sprawling empire and then like a giant Harriet Tubman head that just sort of goes right there on your Civ, and you have to find room for it in order to get the benefit of that particular historical figure. And of course, you can run into one that you aren't familiar with and then research them later. And I think that's an important aspect of the visual mosaic of Patch History. My number 7.
I think the visual mosaic kind of suckers you in a little.
A little bit.
My number 7 is a game I mentioned earlier in the episode, actually, and that's Twilight Struggle. Twilight Struggle shows you the Cold War, and we're talking straight-up history, okay? No more of this, I've been talking about stuff abstracted out. Twilight Struggle is not abstracted out. Mm-hmm. It is the United States versus the USSR, and all the cards are full of history, and if you're not sure, the book tells you what each card means in the event that it happens. These are actual historical events. Of course, you can play them out of order or change them. Things can be different, of course. Cuba might not follow the communism. North and South Korea might be reunited, but you are just going across the whole board. This is a great game. It's a little more complex than most of the other games on my list, but I like it a lot. If you want, there's other games in this family that work too. 1989 shows the fall of communism. There's just a lot of great games that have this historical flavor to them. GMT, the company, makes a lot of fantastic games in this realm, and Twilight Struggle is a great one. It has a cool concept of you playing a card, which lets you take actions, but you may be giving your opponent an event that helps them. Really great game, Twilight Struggle.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the first games that I thought of when we were talking about this list. I've just never played this one, so I can't really put it on mine.
Number 6.
However, I have played my number 6, which is a similar game. This is a sibling of
by
Twilight
the same
Struggle.
Designer.
Yes, Founding Fathers, which is about the drafting of the U.S. Constitution. You're playing various personalities, various founding fathers, and trying to sway the articles your direction, the way that your bent is in order to earn points. It has a similar concept where you've got cards that can be used as people and events and just plain influence in various areas of the board, and a nice basis for learning this aspect of American history. And apparently Tom agrees with me.
I do. This is also my number 6. Now, I want to take a moment here. I realize that a lot of the games on my list, and Eric's list too, actually, are U.S.-centric.
Sure.
And that's not because I think that that's the most important history, but it's what I know. It's also a good chunk of our audience. So I know there's a lot of games out there that have good Polish history and Spanish history. Actually, I think Eric has one of those. Mm-hmm. Different really good moments of history. But I know a lot about U.S. history, so I tend to point some of these out in particular. Founding Fathers is great. The Constitution of America is a wonderfully intriguing document. And what I love about Founding Fathers is it shows you what the articles of the Constitution might have said had people voted a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a fascinating historical game, Founding Fathers.
Number 5.
My number 5, Tom referenced, is Dos de Mayo. which depicts a battle between the Spaniards and Napoleon's army that did not go well for the Spanish army. However, this is one of those games, and there are lots of war games that do this, in which the players are challenged to change history, to do better than the historical standard, the historical status quo. And basically the Spanish team, the Spanish player, is not going to win, but if they hold out, they're not going to beat Napoleon's army, but if they hold out longer than history, then that's counted as a victory. This is a very abstracted war game. It's all with cubes, but it's an interesting one. A very unequal map and unequal sides, asymmetric war game, and a neat system. Dos de Mayo, my number 5.
Yeah, this is a really good choice, Eric. I like that this takes a very specific battle, and you know how it's going to end. You're just trying to delay it as long as you can. It's kind of a sobering thing too, right? And how this happened. My number 5 is from the same designer of Founding Fathers and Twilight Struggle, very similar. 1960, The Making of a President. Part of history, of course, is elections. I could pick a more esoteric choice, I guess, like Die Macher, which talks to you about German elections, but that game's kind of out of print. 1960 shows you our own somewhat confusing presidential election, the electoral system. Not everyone understands that. Kids it takes a bit to show them. This game, when it's over, they'll actually understand the electoral system. They really will. Because you're doing a historical race, John F. Kennedy versus Richard Nixon, and your historical cards at full flavor, and you're trying to figure out what states to go for. Should you fight over California? Should you fight over New York? Should you fight over a bunch of the smaller Midwestern states? It's a really good job. It all comes together. 1960, The Making of a President.
Another one I wholeheartedly agree with, but again, I haven't played this one.
Number 4.
My number 4 is also coming up on Tom's list, so I'm going to wait for this particular token to go by, and then I'm moving several cubes north.
My number 4 is Mine Alone. Eric did not have it on his list at all because I betrayed him.
It's been eliminated. I get it.
Yeah, this is Eric's number 10. Now, Eric, were you surprised that Diplomacy is on my list at all?
No, because I think while this is not a game I really have enjoyed playing, I think I appreciate that it really lays the stage for historical context and brings this time of history to life.
Oh, man, folks, just to clarify, I hate Diplomacy. However, I think it's an amazing classroom tool. And in a classroom setting, it's really fun. What I would do is I'd divide my class up into 7 teams that's covering the 7 states. This is pre-World War I in Europe. So there's Russia and Turkey and England and France and Germany and Italy and Austria. Did I get them all? I might have missed one. But anyhow, you control one of these groups. You have a few pieces on the board. There's no dice. Each turn you write your orders and say what your pieces are going to do. You cannot do stuff by yourself for the most part. You need other people to help you. And so with a class, there's big computer programs that you have out there where you can have them give you their orders each day. And you put them in and you see what happens. Some people can betray other people. It's really interesting because I would see them huddling at lunch, walking around, making deals with other people, what they're going to do for the next day. And like Eric said, it really brings this historical period to life.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of useful internet programs out there where you can do this. I highly recommend them for Diplomacy.
Yeah, I think in a classroom situation, this would really, really work. What needs to happen with this game is to fully commit to it, and that's been my problem with it in the past, is that I've just never been fully engaged, and so I never felt like I was participating properly. I think having a captive audience for it in a classroom situation would work really well.
Well, I did it. Every year I taught history, I would use this in my classes, and it was so entertaining. It didn't even take up that much time. Because I would do it outside of class. I'd say, okay, I have your orders in. They come in. They put them on my desk. I put them in the computer. We'd watch what happened. There'd be some yelling and some shaking fists across the room, some cheers and stuff, and then we go on and we talk about what happened. I just found the whole thing to be fascinating.
Right.
And it's more fun to be on a group with a team than it is to be by yourself. Mm-hmm. It's also a good way to teach kids that people are going to betray you.
Yeah, you learned something today, kids.
Number 3.
Number 3 was Tom's number 8, and that is Through the Ages, a game that has not only the wonders that Tom mentioned in Seven Wonders, but also lots of leaders, lots of personalities that gradually change as the ages advance. And so you start out with stuff like Aristotle, but then you get William Shakespeare, and later on Bill Gates shows up. And some of these you might not be familiar with and might be inspired to check out away from the table. It also encourages technology. You learn about how technology has shifted through the ages. It really is a nice overview of shifting tech and governmental systems and a lot of these things that are abstracted for sure in Through the Ages. But it You get to see how differing civilizations can develop by taking these different paths.
I agree with everything Eric just said. I will say that the reason it's lower on my list is because this is a fairly complex game to learn and figure out.
Yes, maybe less useful as a classroom tool.
Yeah, I mean, although there's some cool leaders in it, it does show economy really well. You could also just play Sid Meier's Civilization on a computer with a class, I guess, or something. But Through the Ages does a really great job at showing that Civilization game the best of its class, probably. So, highly recommend it from me also. Yeah. My number 3 was Eric's number 9. We almost flipped here. And this is one of several games, actually, from Academy Games. You want history, Academy Games has you covered. Not only do they have you covered with the games being full of history, but they have published some books on how to use their games to teach history. So, what can you do? 1775 Rebellion is the one I chose here. There's also 1812, the French and Indian War one. There's the Vikings one. There's a lot of great ones. I like this one because it shows the Revolutionary War, and it's a war game, but it's a very light war game. You're moving some cubes, rolling dice. You can play 2 or 4 players and work together in teams. You have to combine different forces together to get them to work. But it's also more of an area control game than anything else. I mean, it's a war game, but it's a very light one. And you're just trying to figure out what part of the country do you want to control to force the other team basically to concede.
Yeah, I enjoy this one as well. I like the partnership game quite a bit. And sort of, this is an aspect that I guess I vaguely knew about, but it sort of brought some of those details to life, the alliances that were necessary, the different forces. It wasn't just the Americans versus the British. There were other forces in play that were pivotal in victory here. So playing that partnership game and seeing the different forces and strengths of those forces was very interesting here. 1775 Rebellion.
Number 2.
Number 2 is Chrononauts, the Looney Labs card game in which you have a whole array of world events and then change them in order to reach your particular alternate history. You have an alternate character that comes from a different world, a parallel universe, and you have to arrange the timeline in order to match that. Now, Chrononauts is not the greatest game in the world. I think as a concept, it's pretty cool, and that's why it's here on the list, because you see this causality where you flip one event and John F. Kennedy is not assassinated, and that affects events later on down the time stream, and then you have to figure out ways to patch that or flip that back over. And while that, in a gameplay sense, that can be difficult and frustrating, it is kind of cool to see these events and the way that they're linked in the timeline with dates and everything, which is pretty cool. So I think a useful tool if you're looking at a good swath of history. And there's both regular Chrononauts and an early American Chrononauts, depending on what you want to focus on. Number 2, Chrononauts.
Yeah, this one's fun. I mean, it's crazy and it's interesting, and I don't think the game is that good, but Eric's right, though. It just has this, I don't know. It's just fun to say, I changed the course of human events.
Mm-hmm. And then it cascades and ripples.
My number 2, though, is a much more serious style game, and I believe this is Eric's number 4, and that's Freedom the Underground Railroad. This is also from Academy Games, but it's very unlike their other games. It's a cooperative game which is good because you want to be on the right side of this one, helping slaves escape from the South and make it to Canada, where they will be free. And they're not all going to make it. You have to make some pretty grim decisions at points. And it's actually very well-designed, fun game. But the theming, it's a somber thing, and I think it's an excellent tool to teach kids about this part of history. So, yeah, it's a good game.
Yeah, I mean, it's the event cards that come up that are definitely tied to historical events. The fact that you're not just pushing disease cubes around the board. These are people that you are representing. And so it is a much more somber, heavier game. This isn't one that you say it's a rollicking good time. It is a good game, a challenging game, a fun game, but with some very serious subject matter, which can provide some good discussion as well in a classroom setting. I think Academy Games has, as you said, Tom, a teaching guide for this as well, and probably well worth checking out. Freedom, the Underground Railroad. My number 4, Tom's number 2.
And finally, number 1.
Now this I really liked. When I loaded up the document and started entering my top 10 and saw that you had chosen the exact same thing, it's nice to be on the same wavelength with Timeline for our number 1.
This is such a good game for, when I was a kid, what was the hardest thing to remember in history? The dates.
Dates. Yeah, I mean, we sort of said that we were trying to stay away from just a list of dates, and Timeline is basically a list of dates. But I guess this is the most fun way to do it because it's relative date memorization. So depending on which set you're looking at, because you can have events, you can have inventions, which is my favorite deck to play Timeline with, where you have an item that comes up, and you have to decide where it fits in the timeline. And at first, you only have a couple of cards in there. And yeah, you can pretty much say that the telephone was invented between the telegraph and the television. Sure, yeah, that goes right in there. But later on, getting those dates exact and trying to figure out exactly where something fits is very tricky. And it's a good time, and no one's ever quite sure where everything's going to go. And with world history, you will certainly, with that same tension, be able to hopefully memorize some of those dates, or at least get a sense of the relative cascading of those events. It's a really neat system.
I agree, and there's so many different versions of it. Timeline Challenge is my favorite because it kind of adds more ways to play the game. Just, a few extra, like draw a couple cards, which one's the earliest or whatever. But you can plug all the other little timelines into it. So maybe you want to talk about inventions. There's an invention set. You want to talk about British history, American history, pop culture. And then I just mix them all together. I really like just having this big thing. So did Britney Spears One More Hit Me? Well, whatever her stupid song is. Did that happen before or after the fall of the Berlin Wall? That's not hard, but maybe
after. Yeah.
So I don't know. I find that sort of thing interesting.
Yeah, I was speaking with the owner of the Labyrinth game store in D.C., and she does a program with senior citizens, and was presenting them with a few games to try out. And Timeline is always a hit with that audience, and it's an interesting perspective. If you've been around for a while, you may know a few of these, and it can help with memory as well. So that was an interesting aspect of this game I hadn't really thought of.
All right, let's see what the people have chosen. Number 10, Here I Stand. This is a game about the Reformation. It's a fairly hefty game, actually. I mean, complex and stuff, but I've heard very good things about it from GMT. Number 9, Pandemic Iberia. Eric, is this a good choice? I wouldn't know.
I think it's a little loose. I mean, yeah, there's certainly a historical context, and I think there are some historical notes here. You do get a sense of more of a time period than the more sanitized regular pandemic. I don't know. It's a little loose.
Number 8 is The Voyages of Marco Polo, and I'll just be more blunt than Eric. Bad choice, people.
Ha!
It's a great game. I love this game. but it teaches you as much about Marco Polo as, I mean, checkers teaches you about kings moving around. It's you have these people moving around, but other than that, there's no historical flavor to this game at all, other than the name. And the cities on the board are actual cities. Now, number 7 for the people's choice was Timeline. However, it could have been number 1 for all I know. And the reason for that is people pick based on the different entries on Board Game Geek, and there are a lot of timelines.
Yes.
So if I added them all together, it could have been number 1. I don't know. Number 6 is Seven Wonders. Number 5 is Through the Ages. Number 4, 1960. Number 3, Memoir 44, which is a good choice.
Okay.
Like I said, the Command and Color series has a lot of historical stuff in the background. Yep. Number 2, Freedom the Underground Railroad. Hey, they matched me. Woo. And number 1, Twilight Struggle.
Not surprised.
Yeah, it's a very, very well-known game and very popular game.
Mm-hmm.
So that is it for another episode, Teaching History.
Indeed.
Lots of cool things are coming back to us. We have, let's see, Jeff is going to be back with us in our next episode. Mm-hmm. We'll be doing some live episodes coming up this summer, but don't get too worried about that. I know some people don't like those. We have lots of normal episodes. We're going to continue our teaching series for a little bit here. And next week, of course, the fantastic Mandy and Suzanne will be back together, finally.
Indeed.
After, what, 2 weeks apart or so?
Something like that.
Well, that's all I have to say, I guess. You got anything else?
No, I guess this episode is history.
Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
You've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 554, was recorded on May 3rd, 2018. Mandy and Suzanne join you next week, and in 2 weeks, Mandy and I will present our top 10 games that teach science. Support for this podcast comes from listeners like you. Thank you for spreading the word. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. Find out more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Mandy, Suzanne, and Eric, with production assistance from Itai Perez, Derek Porter, and Rob Searing. Our theme was composed by Timothy Pinkham. Linoleum-covered surfaces that terrify half the people who use them, brought to you by Floors Some Fear. And hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. We love feedback. Visit the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Email us at Dicetower@gmail.com or follow us on Facebook. And of course, you can find more from the Dice Tower Network, including Board Gamers Anonymous, Board Game Corner, The Snakes Cast, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, The Geek All-Stars, The Dukes of Dice, Our Turn, and Board Game Breakfast at DicetowerNetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. You know, I should have gone for some sort of Schoolhouse Rock reference at the beginning of the show.
Oh, that's true. I'm a Bill. Actually, I don't know many of the songs from any of the history ones other than I'm a Bill.
Yeah, that's true.
I mostly know the English ones.
Yeah, the grammar rock was...
Na 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 na.
Or math.
Na 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 na.
3 is a magic number.
I always think Conjunction Junction's overrated, by the way.
Is it?